The Bear is a show that many of us were looking forward to returning to our screens this year, and after what was an incredible Season 1 and a Season 2 that added extra layers on top of that and perfected it even more, Season 3 had what one could potentially call an inevitable drop-off. It was always going to be hard to continue the run, and this season of the show proved that even with great writers, acting and momentum, it doesn't always mean that it's going to shine. So with that, I wanted to share why I feel as though this installment of the award-winning show just didn't quite work as well as the previous two. So let's get into it. Here is why The Bear Season 3 feels different. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Chaos for chaos' sake. The first two seasons of The Bear really thrived on making us feel uncomfortable when watching it. Whether that be the one-shot takes that would be present, the extreme close-ups on characters when they'd be entering a state of distress, the chaos in the kitchen, and Carmy's erratic behaviour due to the trauma that it endured. The best that the show has ever executed was in Season 2's Episode 6, which was titled Fishes, and it was one of the most uncomfortable pieces of television that I've ever watched, and I couldn't wait for it to finish. The virality of that episode was something that took the social world by storm, and it wouldn't surprise me if the clips of that episode that were going around is what got a lot of people into The Bear in general. It felt like this season of the show really wanted to lean into that chaos that was often so delicately sprinkled throughout the first two seasons and mainly featured when it really mattered. However, this time round in Season 3, it felt like it tried to capitalize on it, and what often would make a moment ended up dominating it. So, for example, the entirety of Episode 2, Episode 1, and Episode 8. There was just a lot of shouting, a lot of chopping, and it felt like it didn't have the justification to do it as frequently as what it did. I'd also add the Fak brothers into this section too, as they were always so chaotic when they were on screen. Again, what was once a bit of comic relief in the previous two seasons became something which just felt too much. They'd often pop up, and their total lack of understanding and loud personalities would jeopardize and compromise the tone that the episode had been building up to right until that point. So for me, I didn't get the need or understanding of why certain things just had to be chaotic, and it felt like it was just done for the sake of it. In the first season, there was the debt and the fact that Sydney left the pre-order machine on. In Season 2, it was about the whole renovation and Carmy wanting to hit the deadlines, plus the trauma of losing his brother and his dysfunctional mother. Whereas in this season, I just didn't quite buy the need for it. Carmy wanted the star, the review was on the horizon, and his relationship with Richie was hostile, but it didn't need to be as chaotic at points. The lack of independent episodes. One area in which Season 2 of the show shined was in the independent episodes that they had and the dedicated focus that we'd often get on certain characters. For example, Episode 4, which was Marcus, Episode 6, which was focused on Carmy's past and his family, and Episode 7, which was Richie's. These episodes were crucial to understanding more about the characters that we were spending a lot of time with. We understood what drove Marcus and why he was doing what he was doing. With Richie, we saw that he was alone and that he lacked any purpose in life following his divorce. So him realizing every second counts was groundbreaking. And Episode 6 allowed us to see exactly why Carmy is the way that he is and why he wanted to get away from his family. Whereas within Season 3, it kind of felt like they took a step back from that approach and decided to focus more on the ensemble together. Yes, we had the episode with Tina, but funnily enough, that was actually the highest rated episode of the season, showing that these more intimate episodes where we get to look at the characters, their struggles, and see the real human side to them is where The Bear is often at its best. We know the side characters, but the beauty of these episodes is that it shows that they have a life outside of the kitchen and their own issues as well. Tina's episode allowed us to understand why she was so hostile in the very beginning of Season 1 and wasn't receptive to Carmy and Sydney's changes. It was all because she loved Mikey and he gave her a chance when nobody else would. So without this episode, we wouldn't have known that. As well as that, we also had Sugar's episode where she went into labor and we saw her relationship with her mother being repaired. She'd always feared becoming the mother that she had, and she didn't even tell her that she was pregnant. But by the time that she had the baby, we saw that Donna and Sugar's relationship was repaired and they were embarking onto a new chapter, showing that Donna had changed and maybe it was time for Carmy to reach out. So I did have an appreciation for this episode. But my one thing with it is it felt like it was trying to be like Fishes a bit too much with the approach that it had. Granted, you could argue Episode 1 was like that, as we got a deep look inside of Carmy's mind, but it just wasn't as digestible as the other individual episodes throughout the other seasons of the show, just because of the choppy nature of it. But I get it, it reflected Carmy's mind and his journey, which meant that there was a lot of back and forth. None of these episodes were as emotional when compared to Season 2 standalone, and I think that's something that did hurt the show slightly. Kami and Sydney's lack of direction. With regards to Kami and Sydney in this season, it felt like they had a fair bit of screen time, but there wasn't really that much development that took place. There wasn't much growth, and I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that Season 3 felt like a setup for Season 4 of the show, where we're going to see the repercussions and the development there. Kami was working on getting a star and immersing himself within that part of his mind, something which brought back the trauma of when he worked in New York. But it kind of felt like that was it. There wasn't much on his brother Mikey's death, his grief, or his relationship with Donna. Two things that I think were extremely relatable from the previous seasons. Instead, it was all about him being haunted by Claire, the single person in the show that I care the least about, especially when it comes to dominating Kami's arc. I get that she's his peace and the thing that provides him happiness, but having this main focus and clouding his mind was something that I really didn't enjoy, as there's so much more to Kami than being miserable over wanting a girl. The same could also be said for Sydney. She was feeling left out and didn't know whether to commit to becoming a partner at the restaurant, and with the temptation from Shapiro allowing her to be the CDC of the restaurant that he was going to be opening, that was something that was very much taking over her mind. So her development was kind of grinded to a halt because she didn't know what to do, so she was essentially just frozen in time. Prior to this season, the both of them grew a lot, and they also flourished together. They entered each other's lives and had a platonic relationship that complemented the other and pushed the other one to grow in different ways. Whereas in this season, there was just friction, and the beauty that they often offered each other in terms of personal development was non-existent, so I thought that was a shame. So what did work? I don't want this entire video to just be a big thing that's slating a TV series, so I want to talk about some of the positives as well. One of the main positives that I found in this season of the show was the development of the character Richie. He really is becoming a centerpiece of the show and one of the most relatable characters in it. He's struggling, severely struggling. He's alone and he's mourning the past with his best friend Mikey and his wife Tiff. His development throughout the 3 seasons has been a real experience to go along with, and it's been a pleasure watching it. Eben Moss smashes the role, and when he was speaking with Sugar at the table in the restaurant and he had a tear, it kind of felt like a moment that was 3 seasons in the making. He just wants to be happy, and happiness was in the past. Something that I think a lot of people can relate to as well, so his story was definitely the standout for me in this season. I also think that Io's directing in episode 6 and the performances of Tina and Mikey really carried the episode and gave this season a real defining moment. As without episode 6 being as strong as what it was, it really would have let the season down. I also think the performances were top tier as per usual. There's never been a bad performance in The Bear, and I don't think there ever will be. One thing that I think is underrated in the show are the songs that get played underneath certain scenes and also over the credits. They really do select them well, and they know how to evoke emotion at the right time to support everything that we've watched unfold. I'm hoping season 4 will be more like season 2 of the show. This did really feel like it was all about setting up the season rather than a batch of 10 episodes that had its own identity, but I guess time will tell. Apparently they filmed season 3 and season 4 together in one go, so hopefully the criticism won't impact what's on the horizon. Regardless, I did enjoy season 3, I just hope season 4's better. So, there you have it, why The Bear season 3 feels different.